So I'm really happy to be here today. How many veterans do we have in the audience? Got a few veterans. Navy veterans? We got one, two. You said you were in the Navy too, right? Awesome. Well, so I've served in the Navy since, I guess if you count my college time, I went to the Naval Academy, so since 1981. So pretty long time, and soon I'm gonna have to change my bio to have it say over 40 years of Navy service instead of the 30 that it says right now. So I did serve on active duty in the Navy for about 7 years, and I was a supply corps officer where I was stationed on a submarine tender, which is a ship that helps with repairing submarines, maintaining submarines. At the time, the only ships that women could serve on were submarine tenders or destroyer tenders. And now women can serve on any ship, including submarines, so we've really come a long way. I was in the 6th class of women to graduate from the Naval Academy, and so that's something that's kind of cool too. And my sister graduated a couple years after me, so I did not grow up in a military family. My dad had hurt his knee and he couldn't get into the military, but he ended up having 3 children go to service academies. My brother went to the Air Force Academy for 2 years, and then he decided to leave and do something else with his career. But happy to be here today as part of Navy Week. What we're doing is talking to the community about why we have a Navy, the importance of the Navy, what your Navy is doing for you. And I've got a few slides that I'll go through talking about America's Navy, and then I will also talk about the business aspect of the Navy from the perspective of small business. Was said in my introduction, I direct the Department of the Navy's Office of Small Business Programs. So I work with small businesses and large, but try to help break down barriers for small businesses to participate as prime and subcontractors in the contracts that the Navy and the Marine Corps award. So let's see. I don't know if this is working. I'm hitting this. I think I'm doing it right. Is it turned off? There we go. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to talk about your Navy, and the mission of the Navy is enduring because the mission of the Navy has been in existence ever since our nation was created. More than 2 centuries ago, after winning the Revolutionary War, newly independent United States disbanded the Continental Navy because they felt like, well, we're not going to really need it. The British had gone home. What's the point of spending money on a Navy that we won't ever use? But then hostile forces began popping up and threatening our culture and our merchant vessels in Europe. And it quickly became clear that our young nation needed what all the world's powers had, which was a powerful Navy, frontline ocean-going Navy. So in 1794, Congress authorized the construction of 6 frigates, and one of which is the legendary USS Constitution pictured here, with the acknowledgement that attacks on our merchant vessels rendered it necessary that a naval force should be provided for protection. And those 6 frigates are the genesis of the Navy that we know today. Remember this picture because in a little bit I'll show you a picture of a more recent naval vessel, and you can just kind of see the difference between then and now. But our mission today, what does the Navy do? We protect America from attack, and we preserve American influence around the world. We prevent conflict and deter aggression, enabling the peaceful resolution of crises. And we're always ready to fight and defeat the enemy at any time. Preserving America's strategic influence overseas is important. That's an important part of our Navy's mission. We also play a large part in preserving trade around the world, which is really an important aspect of this global economy. 26% of United States jobs are tied to global trade. And 26% of US manufacturing jobs depend on exports. And not just manufacturing, but if you look at, in the state of Arkansas, the products that Arkansas exports, rice, chickens, we've got Walmart home-based here. Lots of products that you ship out, and I'm sure you ship a lot of products in as well. You really can't go to the grocery store these days without seeing your fruits and vegetables, fish coming from all over the world. 22% of agriculture products are sold overseas. And the U.S. is working on increasing exports in an effort to spur the economy even further. And 95% of the world's consumers are outside of the U.S. borders. So we need to make sure that our waterways are safe for U.S. exports. The data that I was provided says that $5.7 billion of exports of products were exported from Arkansas in fiscal year 2016. And the contributions of the American Navy don't just impact and benefit Americans. 70% of the Earth is covered in water, and 90% of global commerce is conducted by sea. So by American ships keeping the seaways clear, we help other countries as well, and we help spur on the global economy. So in this day and age, of the security of maritime trade routes is really vital to the global economy, but for all seafaring nations, not just the United States. And the world is becoming increasingly more reliant on our Navy to help keep those sea lanes open. So America's Navy is ready to defend America and our allies and our partners and our strategic interests at all times. When we go to sleep at night, there's always somebody in America's Navy that's up, that's training, that's doing missions in support of the Navy's mission. So the material foundation of our Navy is ships, and instead of those original 6 frigates, we now possess a wide variety of surface vessels, about 275. We also have submarines. That's included in that 275 number. And undersea warfare has long been a specialty of America's Navy, and that tradition continues today. Our submarine force has evolved from diesel-electric boats of old to today's nuclear-powered vessels, armed with everything from torpedoes to tomahawks and ballistic missiles. And the most valuable assets of submarines, like the USS Virginia class, this is the USS Illinois, is stealth, its ability to strike from the deep sea without warning. And we also have naval power from the air. So it's long been held that the first question of an American leader when we're in a crisis is, where's the nearest carrier? So such a question confirms the importance of naval aviation in America's history. And the most prominent component of naval aviation is the F-18 Hornet, pictured here, and it's a multi-mission jet. It's capable of carrying out ground attack missions and air-to-air combat, as well as mid-air refueling and electronic warfare. And it's just one example of the planes and helicopters and unmanned aircraft that form the backbone of our projected power from the sea. So this is a picture of an aircraft carrier surrounded with other ships. This is typically how our Navy deploys. There's 275 ships in the Naval's battle force, 99 of which are based overseas, and that we call that forward deployed, and in locations such as the Middle East, Europe, or Japan. And of the Navy's 400,000 active and reserve sailors, more than 70,000 of them are forward deployed in support of our operations around the globe. Just one example of the kind of power America's Navy can show is in this photo. It features a total of 11 ships. And that's a typical carrier strike group and amphibious readiness group, approximately 10,000 sailors. So America's Navy reaches every corner of the world. We have 6 major commands that are responsible for naval operations. And here's in a minute, I'm going to show you a few examples of what your Navy is doing for us right now. In the Middle East, the Navy provides regular support to 2 operations against the Islamic State in the U.S. 5th and 6th Fleet areas of responsibility. And current operations against ISIS in Iraq and Syria include airstrikes from the Middle East and the Mediterranean Sea. And maritime security operations are a major part of our operations around the world, including counter-terror operations in the Middle East and Africa and counter-illicit trafficking operations in Central and South America. And humanitarian assistance. And, I know we all have recent memories of cases, situations where we've sent our Navy to help, in Puerto Rico, Texas, and Florida. We also helped out when Hurricane Matthew struck Haiti and the Caribbean. But at the same time we're doing all this, we definitely have our challenges. Some are material and some are financial. But needless to say, all of those challenges pose significant issues for our sailors and our leaders going forward. It's often said that we live in an increasingly complex world, and nowhere is that clearer than on the oceans. The demand for America's naval forces in areas such as the South China Sea, where territorial claims are under dispute, the Black Sea, where we continue to support our NATO partners. And America's Navy is also engaged in operations in the Middle East, the Mediterranean Sea, where we use our combat power against targets in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Libya. Another concern is the emergence of competitors and adversaries with increasingly sophisticated forces, such as China and Russia, as well as countries like Iran and North Korea, who want to deter naval powers from operating near their territory. So America's Navy does have a flexibility to carry on a wide variety of missions, and our leaders have recognized this flexibility. And the Navy is often called upon in an increasing range of operations around the world. Unfortunately, this higher demand request has placed significant strain on our fleet. Not only are we seeing accelerated wear and tear in our ships and submarines and aircraft, but it has also imposed stress on the sailors and their families who have to cope with longer and more frequent deployments. And it's easy to relate to if you bought a car and you were planning on driving your car 10,000 miles a year, but something came up and you had to drive it 20 or 30,000, you're going to need to get repairs more frequently on your car. The expensive repairs are going to come sooner rather than later. And if you didn't have that money in your budget, weren't planning on it, then you're going to kind of be in trouble. So it's similar with the Navy. We're using our aircraft and our ships more frequently than we had planned for, and that requires us to maintain them. And our ships and especially our helicopters are only designed, and our airplanes, for a certain number of flight hours. So if we're exceeding that amount of flight hours, that's putting more wear and tear on the parts on our airplanes, and they fail quicker. So we're having to keep those up. So the Navy has had to forego investments that we had planned on in our hardware and in our sailors just to keep doing our job in this increasingly complex and fast-paced security environment. Here's what we're doing to meet some of those challenges today and in the future. We're restoring and maintaining the Navy's operational and combat readiness, and that's an immediate concern. Not only must we make immediate investments in our afloat forces, but we have to accelerate and extend active ship and aircraft production lines, such as the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer and the F-18 Super Hornet, because they provide relevant capabilities today and in the years ahead. So we're extending their production lines and making investments to maintain those ships and airplanes. But we're also investing in the future. You've probably heard of the Joint Strike Fighter. It's the next generation strike fighter. It's a fifth generation stealth fighter. And during the past year, we carried out testing of this F-35 aircraft aboard our aircraft carriers and amphibious assault vehicles, preparing the pilots and the planes for their ultimate deployment to the fleet. And without the men and women that serve in the Navy, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. So the American sailor, the men and women of your Navy, serve in a variety of jobs throughout the fleet, managing and maintaining ships and submarines and aircraft around the clock. Recruiting and training and properly equipping our sailors is an important step in keeping America's Navy at the forefront of the world's sea services. This ship looks a little different than the one that you saw at the beginning. So what about our future? What will our fleet look like years from now? In the past, there's been a lot of discussion about what the Navy's fleet will look like in the decades to come, but two central themes have emerged. Our Navy will need at least 350 ships, compared to the 275 that we have now, to maintain our superiority on the seas, with a focus on both manned and unmanned platforms. And second, we can't just assume that more means better. As we bring new ships into the fleet, we have to change the way we operate the fleet as well. And these goals are not just for the distant future that future generations can worry about. The current security environment guarantees that the world is not going to stop for us to improve the Navy. Now, hold off a minute. Russia, China, we just need to fix up our Navy a little bit. That's not going to happen, right? So we're working right now to bring new ships into the fleet, like this Zumwalt class destroyer and America's class amphibious assault vessel. And we're looking to innovate as we go, with emphasis on expanding power capability, improved networking, making sure our planes and our ships and our undersea vehicles and our submarines and our unmanned vehicles are all interconnected so they can all see the same thing. Even though they can't see it directly, they can see it through the network. And we're rapidly modernizing our weapons and our sensors. We cannot afford to be complacent or rest on our laurels. We must build a larger and more distributed and capable fleet. And by increasing investments in current and future readiness, and by accelerating the productions of ships and submarines and aircraft and other key capabilities, we can and will ensure that our current and future leaders have the timely, agile, and effective options that they need in order to carry out the Navy's continuing mission of protecting America's interests. And one of the reasons we're here for Navy Week is to, educate the community about the fact that we're going to need, if we get these 350 ships, we're going to need to man them. We're going to need men and women that want to serve on our ships. We're going to need men and women that want to be officers and on our ships. We need small businesses and large businesses to help with providing products and services needed in order for the Navy to achieve the mission. So one of the things that was brought to my attention when I first came here, something that maybe you all, since you're here, you're clearly interested in the community, is that Arkansas doesn't have a Navy ROTC in the college system here in Arkansas. There's no Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps. And you've got a lot of Army, National Guard, and Air Force here, but not Navy. And you're getting ready to have the USS Little Rock, a LCS, Littoral Combat Ship, delivered to the fleet, commissioned in December. So what a perfect time. Got the USS Little Rock that's going to be in the fleet. We're having Navy Week right now. It's something to think about. Why don't we get an ROTC unit so you can help the Navy recruit the best students from your school systems to come and join and help us with continuing our mission in the Navy. So the U.S. Navy is about defending our country's interests and protecting America. It always has been, and it always will be. And that's the mission of America's Navy, and our mission continues. And we're hoping that we can recruit even more students from Arkansas, men and women, to help us build our Navy and maintain it. So next I'm going to go into, I think we have my small business slides next. I gave this past speech that I just gave to the Rotary Club earlier this week, and I also went and spoke to small businesses that are in Arkansas that are interested in learning about how to do more business with the Navy and the Marine Corps. And I'll hit some highlights on those slides for you, and then I'll open it up to any questions. I see it. Okay. So Navy Weeks have been going on for a while, but I became the director of the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs about 2 years ago. And I noticed that, I thought to myself, well, if we're going to have a Navy Week where we go out and educate the public on the Navy and what the Navy's doing for the public, the fact that we need more sailors and Marines to, come in and join our Navy, I thought, well, maybe people are out there that don't necessarily want to put on a uniform or be a civilian working for the Navy, but they might have a business, a small business that, they would be interested in, supporting the Navy in what we do. So I started coming to some of the Navy Weeks. This is my 5th Navy Week, and talking to companies about how to do business with the Department of the Navy. And there are quite a few opportunities. It's just challenging to figure out what they are, and I'll give you some of the secrets. So my office, when I say Department of the Navy, the Department of the Navy consists of the Navy and the Marine Corps. And the Secretary of the Navy is the head civilian that oversees the Navy and the Marine Corps. And then we have a Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Richardson, and a Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Neller, that lead their services. And I work for the Secretary of the Navy. I'm on what we would call the Secretariat staff. My office doesn't buy anything, but we are responsible for, we help oversee offices that do. So we advise, we issue policy that can help maximize opportunities for small businesses to participate in our contracts. We report how well we're doing in terms of providing opportunities. We perform outreach like I'm doing right here. We also perform inreach, where we go and educate people in the Navy about the small business program, because not everybody knows about us. We have to run the office. There's all kinds of things we have to do with that. And we do market research looking for small businesses, and we also conduct training to our government employees on how to find small businesses and about the small business program. So last year, in fiscal year 16, the fiscal year 17 numbers are just, they're not complete yet, but we probably did about the same amount of money with small businesses as we did in 16. In fiscal year 16, we obligated a little over $13 billion to small businesses as prime contractors. And the way you count that is if you're a small business and I award you a $10 million contract, but I only put $100,000 on it, that $100,000 is what I count in this baseline, in this amount here. So $13.44 billion is quite a bit of money that we're spending with small businesses as prime contractors. It would take a whole nother presentation to explain why I can't get the data as easily as this on subcontracting, but I don't have that data. In the federal government, we have a hard time collecting it at the top levels. But suffice it to say that there's even more opportunities than the $13.44 billion through subcontracting to some of our larger companies. As a percent, it's 17.37%. I think this year our percentage is going to be just under 15%. And the reason for that is that the Navy and the Marine Corps are obligated over $88 billion this year, because we're buying more Joint Strike Fighters. We're getting ready to start buying the Columbia-class submarine. We have more and more, as we buy more and more ships. My goal is to keep this dollar amount going to small businesses going up and up. You can take dollars to the bank. You can't take percentage to the bank. So the percentage might go down, but as long as we're still getting dollars to small business, that's what I care about. So this shows you by state, by place of performance, where the company is located. Where the work is being done. Where the work is being done, how much money we spend by state. And it's probably intuitively obvious that it would be on the East and West Coast where we spend quite a bit of money with small businesses. This is the portfolio group, so it tells you the kinds of general areas where we spend with small businesses. So we spend most of our money, most of that $13.44 billion, with small businesses in facility-related services. And that kind of makes sense in that, small businesses, a lot of small businesses are in the facility-related services areas. We have a lot of older buildings on our bases that need to be kept up, maintained, and we tend to contract quite a bit with small businesses to do that. And then the next biggest is knowledge-based services, which, in the federal government, in the Navy, we don't have enough civilians and military in order to get the job done. So we do have to contract out for services. And for example, our program managers that are in charge of delivering ships, they might need to contract out for some of the services to support them in getting the acquisition documentation done that it takes in order to get a major weapons system program through the system and approved so that we can get a contract awarded. That's just one example. We buy engineering services, logistician services, maintenance and repair of our ships. So there's quite a few things that we contract out for. We have 10 different buying commands in the Department of the Navy, and this chart just highlights a few of them, and the next chart highlights the rest. So in general, if I was looking to sell ground equipment to the Marine Corps, I would go to the Marine Corps Installation and Logistics Command. And the phone number there is the phone number for the head of the Small Business Office for that command. Naval Facilities Engineering Command does the construction and the facilities work. About 50% of the money that Naval Facilities Engineering Command puts on contract goes to small businesses as prime contractors. And then here are the rest of the commands. And I can tell you, I used to work at the Naval Air Systems Command and heading up their Office of Small Business Programs. And before that, I was a contracting officer for our H-60 helicopters. So that's where we buy all the planes for the Navy and the Marine Corps, and also services to maintain them, to test them. It's quite a bit of work. But this chart helps small businesses kind of hone in. What I tell small businesses is, first you got to figure out who buys what you sell, which command buys what you sell. And this is a good first start. It's not everything. We have a strategic plan in the Department of the Navy that we put together when I came on board. You can get to it through our website. And our vision is to influence change and create a culture of small business inclusiveness throughout the Department of the Navy. When somebody has a requirement to buy something, we want them to think, I wonder if a small business could do this. Let's do some market research to figure that out. Let me involve the small business professional and let's work with them in order to figure out maybe a small business could do this instead of immediately just going to some of the larger companies. We want to give the small businesses an opportunity to participate. We have 3 focus areas, which I'll get into right here. Well, first off, I also wanted to say that we want our people to think of small business as a strategic advantage. We do have goals. I showed you how I'm measuring against how we're doing in goals in terms of our total obligations to small business. But I don't really like to talk about meeting a goal, because we could be meeting all of our goals and small business professionals could be patting ourselves on the back because we met our goals. But if the companies are failing in the contracts, then that's not good. The main thing we need is to find companies that can help us achieve our mission. And once we do that, meeting the goals shouldn't be a problem. So we have 3 different focus areas, and we are really tracking the details of how we're doing in accomplishing our objectives under each of these focus areas. When I say me, it's my office of about 10 people, and then small business professionals throughout the Department of the Navy. One of the things that we're doing is professionalizing the small business career field. There are now classes at the Defense Acquisition University that one can take in order to learn more about how to become a small business professional. So you can get level 1 and level 2 and level 3 certified in being a small business professional. And that's important because up until last year, there weren't any classes. If you became a small business professional, Typically, they're only one deep, so if you come into a job as a small business professional, it's most likely that the person that had the job before retired 6 months before you come in, and there's no training. So now there is training throughout the Department of Defense and how to be a better small business professional. And then we developed a career guidebook, which helps people understand how you can come into the small business career field, as well as the competencies and skills needed to be a small business professional. And there's about 34 of them. And we go through the knowledge up to beginner, intermediate, all the way up to expert, the kinds of classes that you could take, the kinds of experiences you could have. So if somebody's in engineering, for example, and they think, that small business professional job seems a lot of fun, maybe I want to do that, they could look at this guidebook and kind of see where their weaknesses are and see where their strengths are and prepare themselves better for being a small business professional. And what that means to industry is industry should be getting more qualified small business professionals to help them in navigating the system and figuring out how to do business with the government. We also are training our program managers on how to be better small business advocates. So we're teaching, for example, the program manager that's in charge of the littoral combat ship, the deputy program manager, he knows that he's a point of contact and responsible for small businesses to participate on his program. And just recently, I was up in Wisconsin doing an event similar to this, and I met a small business that was looking for some opportunities to contribute to the littoral combat ship, and I put that small business in touch with the deputy program manager, and that deputy program manager knew that his responsibility was to be responsive and to talk to that small business and help him navigate that. So we developed some training, and that's what this picture is here, just some training that we put together on how a program manager can be a better advocate for small business. So that's part of changing the culture, right? Getting more people out there that are small business friendly and know what they need to do. We're also making metrics more visible throughout the Department of the Navy, how well we're using small businesses. And those are just a couple of the things that I wanted to point out on this chart. We also are optimizing communications, and my being here is part of that. We hired a public affairs officer back in January, and he put together, his name is Ollie Cooperwood, he put together a communication plan, Department of the Navy, Office of Small Business Programs communication plan. And we have key messages that we're going to work on getting out every month. We're going to be putting together some videos that will go on our website so people can, the younger generation, they don't like to read anything, right? They like to just go to a video and, show me how to do it. So we'll have some short videos that cover some of the topics. And just communicate good news stories, how small businesses are contributing to the Department of Navy's mission. Not how the Department of Navy is or isn't meeting a goal, but how small businesses are contributing as prime and subcontractors to meeting the mission. So we're going to make a concerted effort to pull those good news stories out of people, because I know they're out there. And our articles that we write. See, this article says, small business supports the warfighter mission. It doesn't say small business meets a goal, right? And the quotes in there are all about how small businesses are helping contribute to the mission. So the target audience isn't just the public, but it's also internal to our leadership, letting them know as well. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that the Department of the Navy, not me, but the whole Department of the Navy, won the DoD, Department of Defense's Vanguard Award for having the best small business program in Department of Defense last year. This is another part of our optimizing communications. We have this guidebook, this executive summary, looks just like this, kind of small, but it goes through, it's a summary of what we accomplished in fiscal year 16. And it's another way for small businesses to get familiar with the Department of the Navy and read up on what we do and figure out where they might be able to contribute. So what I tell small businesses, if you're looking to do business with us, is the first thing you need to do is identify potential customers. When we put on the event yesterday, we worked with the Arkansas Procurement Technical Assistance Center There's a Procurement Technical Assistance Center in every state, at least one, and they're funded by the Department of Defense, so their services are free. And they work mostly with, emerging small businesses, new small businesses, even small businesses that have been around a while. But they help small businesses navigate the government, not just the Navy, but all of federal government. And they have a bid match, and they can help look on small business offices or commands websites to find upcoming opportunities. Each of those 10 commands I mentioned to you has a long-range forecast of items and services, supplies and services that they plan to buy in the next 2 to 3 years, and they update it about every 6 months. And that's a good first place to start. Go through that list and know what your company provides, know what the Navy needs, and see how you can help achieve the mission. And I also talked to industry about sharing information with other businesses, because there's special procurement authorities. If there are 2 or more service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses that can do the work, then we can set that contract aside and only compete it among service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So then other small businesses can't compete, neither can large businesses, only service-disabled veteran-owned. We have similar authorities for women-owned and for companies located in an historically underutilized business zone, and for small and disadvantaged businesses. So it's important for companies to understand the kind of business that they are and help educate their customer, because not all government customers know about it, but help educate the customer on how they could get to your small business even quicker. Oops. So this is just some information that I give to the companies. Once you have looked at the long-range forecast, these are some of the things you might say. You might go up to the small business professional at one of those 10 commands and say, I found this requirement in your long-range acquisition forecast, and it says that you're going to go full and open competition, but I can do this work, and I know this company can do this work. We think you should set it aside, because when there's 2 or more small businesses that can do the work, it should be set aside for small business. So looking at those long-range forecasts is really important. Also, it's important to understand how those commands buy what your company is selling. Because the government has lots of different contracting vehicles or different contracts that we can use. And so, unfortunately, every command is a little different in how they buy. How they buy their paper, or how they buy their engineering support services. So it's good to get to know the customer. This is a link to our website. We've got a lot of helpful materials out there. This is just stating that we participate in Navy Weeks. And in fiscal 18, the 2 biggest conferences that all of the Department of Navy small business professionals participate in are listed on this chart and the next chart. One is Sea, Air, Space. And that's a big event that's held in April at the Gaylord Convention Center. A lot of top-level speakers, a lot of exhibitors, a great way to network, get to know other small businesses, and get to network with the Navy, and also be able to figure out what the Navy's challenges are and think about how maybe your company could help with those challenges. And the next biggest event, this event attracts about 1,500 people, and it's the Department of Navy Gold Coast Small Business Procurement event that's held in San Diego every year. Last year, I say every year, last year was the 29th year, so next year will be pretty big, 30 years of having this event. And that's a great opportunity to network and understand more about how to do business with the Department of the Navy. So we have the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce emails, and we'll make sure that they're on our list, so that when we start advertising this, we can maybe get some more companies from Arkansas to come. These are just some other tools in the toolbox, other ways of getting to innovative small businesses. These are tools in our program manager's toolbox. I'm not going to go into detail about it here, but just letting you know that we have special authorities in order to be able to get to smaller and innovative companies. We always provide a link to our websites. This procurement toolbox is really helpful. And one of the big issues that's coming up now is, of course, cybersecurity. And in order to do business with the government, starting in December, companies are going to have to comply with our cybersecurity regulations. You know, two-party authentication, two-party authentication, and lots of different cyber requirements. And if you pulled down this drop-down menu, it would talk all about those requirements and how companies are going to have to comply. And also, if any of you are on Facebook or Twitter and you want to follow us, you may. And we're going to be populating this YouTube channel with a lot of small business-related topics. And with that, I'll take any questions. If you have
Thank you, Emily, for that. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and we can get a microphone to you. Hi, Dean. Bob, Skip.
Thank you. I appreciate the information. Thank you for being here. About the Navy ROTC programs, why has Arkansas, I mean, have we had them in the past, and how does one go about initiating those kinds of programs?
Okay. You want to answer that?
Hold on, Brett. Here you go.
Sir, there has not been an ROTC program in the past in Arkansas. There have been requests to a office, which we, Naval Aviation and Training Command. They do go on a list. I will get you, if you'd like, a point of contact that, you know, Lieutenant Commander Dawson doesn't have as much pull as other people, so if you'd like, I can give you a point of contact to request an ROTC program in the state. There are requirements. A school has to have so many students or a consortium, such as Little Rock schools. If enough schools in the area want to contribute, which I believe there will be in this area, also the surrounding region, then we could work on getting the criteria for an ROTC program. Mm-hmm. Sir.
And one of the things I was thinking is perhaps we can figure out who the, you know, which state had the last ROTC program that was set up, and, you know, learn from their lessons learned and figure out how they did it. It's something else that we can do. But, you know, this is something I've been bringing up wherever I go and speak, you know, to the governor, lieutenant governor, to the Arkansas University system. So thank you for your interest in that. Hopefully you can help with it too. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Bob, right here.
What's the timeline to get to 350 ships? When I was at JR, the number was, they were going towards 600, but John Lehman was second. I don't need that. Second out. So I was just curious what the timeline was to get to 350.
Well, I mean, studies have shown we need to get to 350. Congress is going to have to give us the budget for the 350. So I think there's still a lot that has to be worked out on whether we even get the 350, right? But there have been studies that show we do have the industrial base capacity in order to start building more ships right now. We're not using our capacity to its max. So we can build more if we get the budget. And I know I've heard, you know, the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations talk about we need these now, not in the distant future. So.
Is there a timeline to build it up over the next 5 or 6 or 10 years? You know, to 300, or you know, what's in the pipeline?
Well, I'm sure that what's in the pipeline now isn't going to get us to the 350. So we would need authorization in order to buy more to get us that. So it's just something to listen and think about and maybe, you know, as you hear what Congress is talking about for the authorization bill and the national defense bill, and see if we're getting that authority. Mm-hmm.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for visiting Little Rock during Navy Week, and thank all of you for coming out, and I hope you'll come to the next one. Thanks.
Thank you.